To the podcast episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here to talk about exercise. Now, for those of my listeners that didn't get a chance to hear my last episode, can you please briefly tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. I grew up on a farm in Middle Tennessee and got to find what my passion was early on in life, which was helping people stay healthy. And I'm not going to say how many years now. I've been an author and speaker in wellness. I'm a certified health coach, certified personal trainer. My bachelor's is in exercise science. My master's is in health promotion from Vanderbilt University. And that is the nuts and bolts of that.
Okay. And for those of you that haven't had a chance to listen to episode 63, that whole episode goes into intuitive eating, and I highly recommend that you go back and listen to that because it pairs well with what we're going to talk about today, which is exercise. And I didn't know that you have a degree in exercise. It's exercise
science.
Science. Yes. Okay. So that's even better than just like a personal trainer then, because it goes further. Awesome.
Absolutely. I'm not going to, go ahead.
Okay. So based on social media, and a lot of it is in Instagram, there's a lot of teachers on Instagram and they are in one of two camps. They're like fully committed to some kind of boot camp or CrossFit style exercise, or they just basically can't find any time at all to exercise because of work and family. And is there something in the middle?
Yes, there is. And like anything that you're trying to learn how to do new and find the best of both worlds, you've got to go to the principles. You've got to go to what are the foundational research, what are the things that come up over and over again in research, and based what you do on that. So for all the history teachers listening, I've got a study that you might enjoy. And it'll give us one of the foundational principles of this. Back in the 1950s was when my industry, the exercise science, exercise physiology industry, was born. And it came out of an epidemiological study that was done in England. They noticed that in London, the bus drivers, or I shouldn't say the bus drivers, the transportation industry was seeing a 50% incidence of heart disease. So they said, okay, what's up with this? Who's getting it? Who's not? And when they did this study, they realized, well, there are two types of employees in the transportation industry. One is the drivers, and they are the ones who are sitting all day long.
Right.
And one are the ticket takers. And they're the ones who, they're not doing high intensity, but they're constantly going up and down the stairs of the double-decker buses, walking up and down, taking the tickets. Kim, guess which one got heart disease?
The ones that are sitting.
The ones that are sitting, the drivers, exactly.
Right.
So what my industry started doing at that time was looking at, well, not everybody's going to be a ticket taker. Not everybody's going to be, walking all day long. Teachers tend to do that some when you're standing and walking around a classroom. But not everybody's doing that. So that means we need to create this formula that anybody can do. And you've probably heard this, and your listeners have probably heard this, and that is exercise 3 to 5 days a week at a certain intensity for 30 minutes to 60 minutes. Have you heard that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. So that's where that came from, because that, from a calorie standpoint, equivalates, is that a word? Sorry to all my English teachers out there. That equals what those ticket takers were doing approximately. There's another study that I really enjoy, and that is there was two groups, one group of runners who ran 30 minutes at a time, another group of runners who ran 10 minutes 3 different times a day. Then they measured what the fitness results were, what the health results were. Fitness, and we measure that more of, okay, where's your VO2 max? What's your endurance like? Whereas health parameters are more, what's your blood pressure? What's your resting heart rate? Things like that.
Right.
From all of the health parameters, Kim, they were the same. So it did not matter if you ran at 30 minutes or if you ran 3 times a day for 10 minutes. Fitness, there was a difference. If you're going to go train for doing a 5 or a 10K, you can't do it 5 and 10 minutes at a time. You need to go do it all at once. But from a health standpoint, it was the same.
So then, how about things like hardcore exercising? Those people who, are going to do high intensity and they're going to do weightlifting and, they're going to go 6 days a week. I mean, is that going to be, are they necessarily going to be healthier than those of us that go like 3 to 5 times walking?
From a health standpoint, a tiny bit. There's a case of diminishing returns, because what you just described from a hardcore standpoint, that was more of a well-rounded program, several days a week versus 3 days a week walking. So there's going to be a little bit of health difference, but not much. Fitness, absolutely, but not a lot of difference on health. So if somebody is trying to, if they're not wanting to go the hardcore route and they're wanting to get creative in their exercise time, just from a health standpoint, there's some ideas that they can do. One is, as a family, exercise together. Some of my best memories with my mother, who on the last podcast, we talked a little bit about her and bragged on her some. So that was her time to decompress. It was my time to decompress. And we did that, 3 or 4 days a week, walking like you were just talking about. Another option is tracking during the day. Tracking, where can you find those 3 pockets of 10 minutes that you can get up and move and do something. This one is big. I have a friend who is a teacher's assistant, and when she gets home, she is spent, like, teachers and anybody who's engaged with students all day long. You're going to be spent at the end of the day. She initially, before she and I talked, would come home, click on the TV, Netflix, something like that, grab her munchies, and veg for an hour.
Right.
Until the rest of the family got home. And now she's looking at, okay, if I spent the first 30 minutes of that walking, then one, it's going to decrease my stress. So I'm going to eat less from stress eating, which we talked about last episode.
Right.
And it's going to get up and burn some calories. Another big tip is convenience. And I've got 2 cousins that were inspired by my mother to become teachers. So they're teachers. And one of them has junior high boys at home. So between the boys' schedule and their schedule as a family and her schedule as a teacher, she's like, this is not happening for me to go to a gym and spend an hour and a half, 2 hours doing the hardcore stuff. So she has an elliptical in her the middle of her living room. She has an elliptical. So it makes it really convenient. Oh, I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to hop on the elliptical while I'm doing that. There's 3 shots that I describe to people. If you take all those principles and you say, how do I mix and match this?
Right.
One is to do step shots, and that might be doing a step tracking app so that when you're up and moving around during the school day, you're collecting your steps. Another one is short shots, and that's those 10-minute blocks we talked about. And then the other one is solo shots, and that's that longer dedicated block for physical activity. So you can mix and match those. To your question about the hardcore, the people who always do the dedicated blocks of time, you were asking about what's going on for them, pros and cons?
Well, if they're necessarily going to be healthier, compared to those of us that are just trying to squeeze in time. Yeah. The thoughts for them are you're going to be a little bit healthier, but definitely a big fitness difference. Right. And I feel like, especially maybe in your early 20s, before you start a family, unless you've already started a family, but before you start a family, it's easier to do that in the hardcore exercising, camp. But then, life rolls around and you can't do that anymore. Or let's say you have to take on a second job because your teaching job isn't paying enough.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when are you going to squeeze that in? Do you lose those effects? Is it better just to have a slow and steady exercise routine rather than, being really hardcore?
You will definitely lose some of the fitness benefits. As long as you continue to fit in some type of physical activity, you're going to keep a lot of the health benefits. The biggest caution with what you just talked about is And this is probably my biggest caution with the hardcore camp is sometimes we can get that mentality of all or nothing. That if I can't go to the gym and do an hour and a half of all this stuff, then I'm not going to go do anything. Well, the research shows us, as we talked about at the beginning, yes, it will absolutely do something, even if you're just fitting in a 30-minute walk one day, a kettlebell class one day, and the next day just go walk for 2 10-minute breaks. So not thinking about it being all or nothing is going to help a lot.
And ironically, when I did that, where I would follow a program and I would spend like 45 minutes doing weights, I would get so stressed out if I had to miss my weight day. And stress,
Yes.
it causes weight gain, too much stress. And so to me, I was thinking, this is stupid. Like, no, it's not bad to lift weights, but when you get into that mentality, like you said, of all or nothing, you're just making it harder for yourself also to maintain that in the future, because life is going to derail, your best workout schedule no matter what. I don't know anyone as a teacher who's been able to maintain that their entire career without something stopping that, whether it be an injury or, a family or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. And what you just alluded to is having that mindset of having a backup plan. So if somebody is doing the hard, let's say somebody is 24 or 25 years old, they don't have a family yet. Do they have a backup plan for when something derails, whether it is an injury or, being, not so sick that you can't work out, but, maybe you've got a cold that's like, I don't want to go to the gym and do anything intense. Do you have something that you can fall back on? And sometimes that backup plan is not a backup plan from something is bad, but a backup plan of, oh, I'm on vacation and there's not a gym nearby. Well, if you know the principles of exercise, if you're at the beach, go rent a sea kayak and learn how to paddle over the waves.
Right.
And that's going to be a huge upper body workout. So just realizing the body doesn't care how it moves, it just wants to move. And you can put that in.
Right. And also, if you're sick, I feel like your backup plan should be resting.
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on the type of, if it's a head cold and you go for a 30-minute walk, that's not going to be detrimental.
Right.
If you're training for a half marathon, that's a different story.
And I like the idea of, you mentioned on vacation, because I remember I would panic when I would go on vacation. Like, how am I going to, keep all of the progress that I've made? I'm going to, gain weight over vacation. And number one, vacation is supposed to be enjoyable and relaxing. And usually when you go on vacation, you're exploring, walking around, and all that walking is probably even, I'm burning more calories than I would that 45 minutes in the gym. And
Yes.
I didn't even think about that until I started like tracking, like you had mentioned, I would track on my Apple Watch, and it also tells you based on your heart rate and all that, how many calories you're burning. And I thought, exercise doesn't just have to be hamster on a wheel at the gym or throwing heavy things around. It could just be your body moving.
Yeah, because like I said, your body doesn't care how it moves. It just wants to move. You mentioned, since we're on the vacation topic and we're in summer, I'm going to chase that rabbit for a second, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
The way that I teach vacation and exercise is based on, you can either use that vacation time as recovery time. So maybe you have been in the gym pushing. Well, your body needs a break. So if you're going to go on a 5-day vacation, maybe that's your time for those muscle fibers to heal back fully and recover. If you are going on vacation, you can also use that time to improve your fitness. So if you have been sluggish during the winter and the spring and you're starting to get back into exercise, maybe vacation is when you say, I'm going to go run on the beach. I'm going to go on do some mountain hiking. I'm going to use that time to improve my fitness. Or it's time that you can use the fitness that you have worked so hard to earn. And that's, your sea kayaking or downhill skiing if it's wintertime, those types of things. So, you can maintain it, you can use it, or you can improve it.
And what about those in that, in the beginning, I talk about two camps, the hardcore and those who can't find the time or they lack motivation, how can we use the summer to get them to start?
Okay. Before we get to that, I just
Okay.
had another thought. You mentioned the stress that you felt if you had to skip a workout
Right.
and the cortisol and that stress increasing weight gain.
Mm-hmm.
Something that the hardcore folks sometimes don't recognize or have never been taught is high intensity exercise, not necessarily, faithful exercise, hardcore from that standpoint, but hardcore in the sense of high intensity.
Mm-hmm.
High intensity exercise increases your cortisol.
Okay.
So if somebody is doing high intensity exercise 6 days a week, sometimes they start gaining weight because of the excess cortisol that they're releasing.
So it's like diminishing returns there.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Yeah. So if somebody's going to do high intensity and you enjoy it, go for it. Just don't do it every day. So anyway, to your question of, sorry, a little rabbit trail there.
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
To your question of ways to get moving during the summer. I love this question because it's a time that you can experiment, because as teachers, you have a lot of stress during the year, but you do have a little more flexibility during the summer that you could take. If you live in a town that has several different gyms, most gyms will give a free week pass. So instead of going to a gym, signing up, and hoping that you're going to like it, go to all of them that you're interested in and say, can I get a free week pass? Even if they don't normally have it, they'll probably give it to you. Mm-hmm. And try that. That gives you a week at each different one. If you've got 6 of them, that takes you through most of your summer. So you get those workouts in, and then by the end of the summer, you know which one you've really clicked with that you may want to use during the school year. Classes, it's a great time to try different classes because, there may be some Pilates class at a place that's at 11 o'clock in the morning when there's no way during the school year you can make it.
Right.
But during the summer, you can try some different things.
And they're smaller because most people are still at work except for, like teachers and stay at home.
Yep, absolutely. So you get more individual attention. Gym questions, and if anybody's taking notes, I encourage you to jot these down. If you're driving, you'll have to come back and listen to this part of it later because I don't want you writing while you're driving. But if you are looking at gyms, there are some questions that you want to ask yourself as you look at them. One is, do you want one that's all inclusive? It's got a pool. It's got different racket sports. It's got classes and equipment and everything. Or do you prefer a boutique gym? Maybe it's martial arts or cycling classes or a climbing gym, a little personal training studio. So think about your personality and the types of things you would want to look for. Also, if you want kids around, because some people, if they have kids, they're like, yeah, I want to make sure that there's childcare and that there's classes for kids. On the other hand, your kids may be out of the house and you're tired of being around children and you're around kids all day in your job. So you want to go someplace that is mostly adult focused. So think about that. Really think about the staff. Early on, Kim, you mentioned that I'm a certified personal trainer, but you didn't know I had the exercise science degree. Ask for the credentials of the staff because there is I can tell you from, and they, especially if you're looking at hiring a personal trainer for a couple of sessions to get you set up, get their background, ask them, what injuries have you worked with? Because even if you don't have injuries, which I hope nobody listening does, if a person is experienced with different injuries, then that means they know how to help you prevent getting those injuries. Also with the staff, just finding out what their credentials are, because there's a huge difference between somebody who's 18 years old and has a personal training certification and somebody who's 40 and has been doing this for years and has degrees.
So what should I look for, though? So if I ask them and they tell me, and how will I know if it's something that's good or not? Okay.
If you're looking at certifications, there are 3 really good certifying bodies. One is ACE, the American Council on Exercise. That's who mine is through. One is ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine. And another one is, it just slipped my mind, so I'll give it to you and we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
And so any of those three certifications, that would be absolute minimum. Minimum also that the person has some years of experience and or a degree. So if they're
Okay.
an so if they're an exercise specialist, exercise scientist, and they have their certification and they're 24 years old, okay, well they're 24. They're not going to have 10 years of experience,
But if they
but
have a
that's okay.
degree, it might help.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Because with the degree has come a lot of internship hours. So they still have a
Oh,
lot of hands on.
okay. Because, I've seen so many programs online where you can become a personal trainer. It's really easy. And just
Right.
any Joe is coming up with their own online personal training certificate. So
Right.
it'd be, I'm glad that you mentioned which ones to look for. Okay, so we
Yep.
have, is it an all-inclusive or boutique gym? Are there kids around and the staff? Anything else?
The only other two, and this is more if you're definitely looking at joining the gym versus just, hey, let's do it for the summer, is what's the cleanliness, especially the restrooms, because that will tell you how things are kept. And then if there's a repair sign on a piece of equipment, that is not anything to worry about at all. Equipment breaks down.
Okay.
But if you go there on a Monday and it's that way, and you come back, you visited a couple of other gyms, and you come back 3 weeks later and that sign is still on there,
Right.
run.
Okay.
Because they will, if they're not taking care of their equipment, they will not take care of you.
Now, should gyms be replacing their equipment frequently, or what are your thoughts on that? Because sometimes the equipment looks old.
If it looks old, but it is in good condition as far as it's been oiled, it's not breaking down.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of gym equipment that, like the gym where I personally work out and train folks, there's equipment in there that's probably 20 years old, but it's so well maintained that it's perfectly fine.
Okay. Okay, so you don't have to always look for like perfectly new gym
No,
equipment.
no,
Okay.
no, it doesn't have to be new. If you look at the treadmills and all the belts are really, really worn and loose, oh, it may not have a repair sign on it, but they're not supposed to be moving
Yeah.
when you're walking on the belt.
Okay. Good to know. Oh, go ahead.
So I was just saying that's some gym stuff, but some other things during the summer people can do is, again, use that principle of the body just wants to move. So games and playtime, frisbee golf. If you find a park that has a sand volleyball area, grab a couple of friends and go do that. Another great thing, and my cousins do this, is setting up evening walks, because once you get in the habit of that with a couple of friends, once or twice a week, then that's something that you can keep up during the school year,
Right.
is having that adult time. And the key is during the summer is getting in a habit that can translate to the school year.
Right. And it's also cooler in the evening anyway, so.
Yes, definitely. You definitely want to avoid the heat midday.
I also like to we have in my neighborhood just a pool. And
Yes.
it's fun just to I'm not a very good swimmer, but just, splashing around and tossing a ball in the pool, that resistance when you're trying to walk across the pool.
Yes, yes. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Kim. There's a perception that, oh, it's pool exercise, so it's not really intense. Going against that water resistance, oh, it definitely is. A colleague of mine did some personal training for some football players, and their cross training that she trained them in was in a pool. And they were like, oh, water aerobics, this is sissy. She pushed them to a point that they were like, okay, we can't move. If you go against water resistance, it's a workout.
Right.
Absolutely.
Especially if you're trying to run in the water or walk
Oh,
in the
yeah.
water. It takes forever. Plus you start floating
Yeah.
back.
Uh-huh.
Or at least I
But
do.
the fun thing is that's a summertime activity. You feel like you're having fun. You forget about the fact that it's exercise.
Right. You're moving, and I think one of the themes that we're talking about here is just finding creative ways to move. It doesn't have to be where, I'm going to follow Beachbody or something like that. It's moving, because sometimes those programs can be really, I don't know, boring, or they feel too strict, or like someone's telling me what to do. And so that leads me to my next question that I was thinking about. there have been many times when I've resisted following a program, like I said, because I don't want someone to tell me exactly what to do on what day. But, I still like to exercise and build lean muscle. I know that having muscle is important. So, how can I come up with my own program?
Ooh, I like that question. I like your questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, it goes back to let's look at the principles. Anytime that you're going to, you really have two choices. You either follow a program that somebody has set up based on the principles, or you learn the principles and create your own thing.
Okay.
And so let's go through some of the principles specific to the muscle building for that lean muscle mass you were talking about.
Okay.
There's 5 that you want to look through. One is the principle of adaptation, and that is your body is going to adapt to whatever load that you put on it.
Okay.
So if you're used to lifting a 5-pound dumbbell, or you're used to hiking up a particular hill, those muscles involved are going to adapt to that. And that leads to your second principle, and that is overload. Anytime that you have adapted and you want to keep building more muscle, you have to overload beyond what you had been doing. There's a safety rule with that, and that's our third principle, is if you stress the muscle more than approximately 10-15% jump at a time, you're risking injury.
Okay.
So you do want to overload, but let's say that you have been doing a 10-pound dumbbell for bicep curls. You don't want to jump to 20
Right.
pound dumbbells. You would go to a 12 if it's available, or at most a 15-pound dumbbell. So about a 10% jump, or 10-15% jump. Training specificity. And that one is if you are training, okay, I'll give this example because this one's one a lot of people, okay. If you want to reduce your waistline, training specificity says, you're going to be able to do that as far as shrinking through calorie burning, not through crunches. Crunches will tone the muscles, but won't reshape if any fat tissue's there. So training specificity also means, okay, this is obvious, but if I'm training my biceps, I'm not training my shoulders or my legs at the same time. But here's where, I'm not going to get into that yet. We'll do the next one. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Rebuilding. Rebuilding time is the last one. With rebuilding, this means you have microscopic tears that happen in the muscle fibers whenever you tax them. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. It's perfectly healthy. It takes about 48 to 72 hours, depending on how hard you pushed, for those muscle fibers to rebuild stronger. So if you're going in the gym and you're doing squats every day because you want to tone up your glutes, so you're just going to get in there and do squats every day, you're actually not going to do that because all you're doing is getting microscopic tear after microscopic tear, and they're never going to rebuild and get stronger.
Okay.
So questions on that before I go into how to apply those principles?
No, that makes sense, especially because I've read so many times that you can't just do crunches to get 6-pack abs. You can't just do certain exercises to, like you said, reshape one area. First, you have to burn calories overall, because otherwise you're just going to build muscle on top of fat.
Right. And so if you're looking at, okay, my main goal is building muscle because I want to be able to be functional when I'm 80 and 90 years old and have the muscle strength to do what I want to do, you don't necessarily have to worry about slimming down with it. It's just training specificity. Let's go ahead and do the example that went through my head a second ago. So if I'm doing I'm going to throw out some terms, and if the listeners don't know these exercises, we'll figure out a way to get them to them. So if somebody's doing a chest press, so you're laying on your back and you've got the dumbbells in your hands and you're pressing them up toward the ceiling, and your elbows are bending and straightening and bending and straightening.
Right.
That bending and straightening of the elbows means you're not only working your chest, you're also working your triceps and your shoulders. Whereas if you're doing what's called a chest fly, and that's when your arms are out from you. The elbows are in a stationary position, and you're only moving from the shoulder joint, bringing the weights up over your head. That is only working chest and shoulders. It's not working the triceps. So training specificity means which exercise is going to give you the most bang for the buck. Okay, during the school year, you've got a whole whopping 10 minutes to get your weight training in. Don't do a chest fly because you're only going to work the chest.
Right.
Do a chest press so that you get to work arms and chest at the same time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep, you're hitting multiple muscle groups.
Yes, exactly. So some ways to apply this, you've got traditional strength training at home that you can do. And for that, you just need some dumbbells and a sturdy bench, or even 2 sturdy chairs that you put side by side. And from a safety standpoint, highly recommend that you hire a local trainer to come in and do hands-on with you. A lot of trainers do Skype sessions, and I can do that, but I really prefer people have hands-on, somebody in home, making sure that they're doing things safely. If you don't want to go that route, there are a ton of videos out on the web that will show you how to do different exercises. So you can do traditional strength training at home and just use that principle of rebuild, that if you work chest and back on Monday, you're not going to work it again until Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
If you do legs on Tuesday, you're not going to work it again until Thursday or Friday. But that can be mixed and matched. So let's say you wanted to throw in some Pilates or some martial arts. And this happens for me a lot. I take a martial arts class on Thursday nights. I'll go in, and that night he will just kill us on leg work. We are kicking and kicking and kicking. Well, if Friday's supposed to be my leg day, sorry, legs, you've already been worked out Thursday night.
Yeah.
It's not happening. You're going to get a lot of extra stretching or something else, but you're not going to get worked again. And that's a way, if you do some martial arts or Pilates, to throw in whichever body part is worked. You've overloaded it. It's now time to rebuild it. Nature, you can go out in nature, push-ups against a tree, walking lunges in a park. If you have a resistance band, you can even do back work in nature, because you wrap the resistance band around a tree and do your rows, do your low pulley rows around a tree. And so again, the body doesn't care how it moves, it just wants to move. If you don't want to follow that prescribed program, just mix and match. Even things like, I talked about sea kayaking, but if you don't live near an ocean, if you have a lake or a river nearby, rent a canoe and go paddle on a Saturday. Your upper body is going to get its workout in.
Now, do you have any recommendations in terms of, when you're creating your own program, how to group muscles in terms of like muscle work? So you had mentioned like the chest press, you're hitting 3 muscles. Is that it for those 3? Or do you recommend that we do like also like tricep kickbacks, or do you know what I mean?
Yes. You taking the principle of rebuild with how intense that weight training is. I've got one weight training partner that, because she is a professional bodybuilder, because she hits her muscle groups so hard, she will only do one muscle group a day and hits everything just once a week. So, chest on Mondays, back on Tuesdays, legs on Wednesdays, etc. Because it takes her more than 72 hours to recover, because she has broken down so much muscle fiber. The other extreme is you can work full body Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because you're giving yourself a break in between. And then you can mix and match just seems to be my term today. You can mix it up in between there. So if you like doing chest and back together, you can do that. And then arms are going to be worked a little bit with that. So you wouldn't want to work arms the next day. You might, let's say you did chest to back on Monday, then you might do legs on Tuesday, then you might do arms on Wednesday, and then you could do legs and abs on Thursday, and then maybe chest and back again on Friday. So another gauge is if you are sore 2 days later, like really, really sore, then you probably want to give yourself one more day
Okay.
before you do that muscle group again. And to your point earlier, Kim, about not liking those prescribed programs, that's one of the things I really like about the do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've learned the principles and once you know you're doing the exercises safely, is because a prescribed program may say, okay, this is the workout you're supposed to do today. Well, if you worked really hard and you're still sore, you're not ready to work that again. You
Right.
need the rest.
Right. And I like the idea of just doing everything 3 times a week. Can you still, like, on Tuesday and Thursday, like, run or walk and not overtax your legs?
Absolutely, because you're using the muscle fibers in a different way, and you're actually using, you've got fast twitch and slow twitch muscle fibers, which I won't go into trying to
Right.
describe, but that's going to be used a little bit different. The only thing I would say is if you've done like an intense leg workout and your legs are so sore, walk the next day, don't run.
Can you do cardio the same day as weightlifting?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you recommend that you do it before or after you lift?
There are two schools of thought on it. My personal preference is weights first and then do the cardio because of how the blood shunts in the body.
Okay.
But other people prefer to do cardio first because if you're not doing really intense cardio, you're not going to have to worry about the blood shunting necessarily, and it's actually a good warm up
Right.
for doing the weights.
Okay. Yeah. I've been on both sides where like currently right now I walk a little bit before I do my weights and then excuse me, I do my running after I work out because I've been moving my legs and I feel like I can run better. But if I really work my legs, I definitely can't run,
Right.
like you had said, and I just walk.
Yeah. So you intuitively, there's that word, you intuitively are listening to your body and picking up on what the science tells us. And that is, warm it up, then do your weights, and then do your more intense cardio.
Right. And
So-
sometimes your body just tells you. It doesn't give you a choice.
That's right.
It's like, no, nice try. You're not running today. I was thinking about it can get really hot in the summer in certain places. I don't know about where you're at. In San Diego,
Oh, yes.
not so much, but I don't see myself really going out and walking in Central Park when it's 100 degrees and super humid. So if you live in an area that gets inclement weather, do you have any suggestions on how they can keep their bodies healthy, like during a snowstorm, but also during a heat wave?
Yeah. So if it's something that's short term, like let's say, Thursday's your day to work out and it is pouring down rain. Oh, okay. Guess what? You just got a day off to rest. It's okay. You're not going to get out of shape for skipping one workout. And in fact, as we talked about earlier, you need the recovery time. So that's just your recovery day, not a problem. If it's a snowstorm that now you've got 5 snow days, you're locked in your house, cabin fever, you can't get out, or the opposite extreme where it's so hot outside the 100 degrees that you were just talking about, that's when you get creative. You're looking at, okay, if we've been taking, some of your listeners, I've got some friends who take dance lessons. So maybe we're going to practice our dance routines at home, locked in with all the snow out, or because we didn't get a walk in this morning and now it's 100 degrees, we've got to exercise, it's going to be indoor. Of course, you've also got the gym option as long as it's not a snowstorm that's got you snowed in.
Right.
If it's a heat issue, you can get to a gym or get to the pool like you were talking about. The pool is ideal if you're doing the heat stuff. Turning on some music, having a family dance competition, stairs. If you have stairs in your house, who needs a Stairmaster when you have stairs in your house?
Right.
You just put on Teachers Need Teachers to listen to the podcast while you're doing stairs, and you get some learning in at the same time that you're getting your exercise in.
You can do tricep dips on stairs too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I personally, I worry again, like when I go on vacation, like I don't have my gym equipment, but I found that even just body weight exercises, just like squatting in place or doing push-ups, even if they're on my knees, like anything that I can just do to maintain those muscles seems to help.
Yeah. Back is the only, I normally travel with a resistance band because back is the only thing I have found that it's tough for me to do without equipment. And the reason is I'm not strong enough to do pull-ups. If somebody's strong enough to do pull-ups, you can work full body with no equipment at all.
That actually kind of leads me to the next thing I was thinking about is, when we think about the way that a teacher moves throughout their day, they're on their feet, they're crouching down, they're sitting down, getting up, which can be hard to get from crisscross applesauce to standing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there certain muscles that we should be thinking about in terms of, increasing the strength so that we can have an easier time and be in less pain when we're moving around?
Well, you just talked about one of the big ones, and that is squats.
Mm-hmm.
If you're squatting up and down, then guess what you need to do as part of your exercise? Squat up and down. Because what you're alluding to is that principle of adaptation. If you're wanting getting up and down off the floor to become easier, then that means training specificity and adaptation. You're going to need to do squats so that you can do that. And I will say I applaud all the teachers who do squat down and crouch down versus bending over at the waist. Because if you've been over at the waist and come back up once, that's not a big deal. But if you're staying bent over at the waist, working with younger children, gets to be very difficult on the low back. So squatting down and crouching down is important to do. Another movement, so to speak, that teachers do constantly, and that's standing. And so if you're standing a lot, one of the things to do at night, and this isn't a strengthening, this is just helping with blood flow and varicose veins issues later on in life, is lay on the floor at night with your legs up against the wall to reverse the blood flow.
Oh.
That will help a lot. And stretching the calves during the day, because standing for long periods, your calves are contracting, so you want to really stretch those. And actually, you want to strengthen the lower back for two reasons, because you mentioned sitting on the ground. If you're sitting on the ground and leaning forward a lot, or you're standing a lot, that puts strain on the lower back. So the Superman exercise, which is where you lay on the floor face down, arms are stretched out over your head, and then you lift your arms and your legs at the same time. As you breathe out, breathe in, the arms and the legs come back down. Do 15 or 20 of those every night. That will help the low back. Also, sitting on the ground is going to shorten the hip flexors. Those are the muscles that are top of the thigh, below, kind of in the hip area below the stomach. Mm-hmm. And the big thing to do for the hip flexors is a version of a runner's lunge. And that's where you get into a lunge position and let your back knee drop to the ground. Shift your weight forward until you feel a stretch in that hip flexor area.
Okay. It's interesting that you mentioned back, because I always wondered why I needed to work my back. I thought maybe just so I can reduce my back fat. But, now that you mentioned that it's helping in terms of when I'm standing all the time, I think that kind of makes it more important for me, because I don't really think about doing back exercises, to be honest. I just figured everything else kind of helps me strengthen my back when I'm working out, because I got to stay upright.
Well, actually, I'm going to flip your thinking on that. We do so much forward in our life. When you are on the computer, Kim, when you are doing lesson plans, when you are grading papers, that is all forward and using more chest in front of the shoulders.
Right.
Upper back, it doesn't get any love unless we specifically work it.
Oh,
when we're standing, when we're leaning over, when we're sitting and stretching out, doing things with kids on the floor, that's it's straining the lower back. So we've got to work the lower back to keep it strong. So upper and lower back both need work even more than the chest does.
That's interesting. And I do want to trace back to what you had mentioned about a personal trainer for those of you listening. I've had a personal trainer even just for a couple sessions so they can help me with my form. And especially I feel like with back exercises, if you aren't having proper form, you can really throw your back out.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Absolutely.
if you can't afford ongoing, just ask them for a few sessions to make sure that your form is okay, and then you can move on from there if you can't afford it.
Yeah, it's the big reason for having a trainer long term is if you have goals that you
Mm-hmm.
are wanting to constantly change your routine, or for accountability.
Right.
Well, accountability, get a workout partner.
Right. And if you have goals, again, same thing. And you can also just track them and journal those
Yeah,
with your
absolutely.
progress.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much for this. I mean, for those of us that maybe lost our motivation over the summer, you guys, you don't have to join one of those programs necessarily, the ones that you see on social media, to get fit this summer. Just something as simple, like Sherry mentioned, as body movement exercises, getting out and playing and having fun. I think it could be fun to go and try out different gyms and see if there's anything that excites you. And from what I remember, they even let you go to the classes for free as well. And so you can benefit from that. And maybe if you find a class that's totally your jam, then, that'll get you motivated to move. And maybe even invite one of your teacher friends, to go gym hopping with you. I think that could be
Oh, that's a
kind of
great
fun,
idea.
explore them together. But this can be the summer when we finally get moving, and you don't have to exercise all the time. I exercise, I dedicate 2 days a week. I know that's not enough, but I dedicate 2 days a week to going to the gym. If I have time for a third day, that's fine. And on the other days, I make sure that I do a lot of walking around campus. So it doesn't have to be where, you feel pressured to follow, a program or a schedule. It's just getting yourself moving. It sounds like that's the
Well,
theme for today.
I'm I'm going to challenge you on something you just said.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
said you said that I dedicate 2 days a week to exercise. I know that's not enough. But then you went on to talk about what you do on those other days.
Right.
So I would say from a health standpoint, now I don't know, you may be training for a half marathon. In that case, yeah, 2 days is probably not enough. But from a health standpoint, Kim, it sounds like you are
Oh, yay.
doing what you need to do.
Perfect. Then I don't feel so bad.
No.
Because I just, especially when you're tracking, you can really see it. It's almost like a competition with yourself. Like, how can I get those extra steps in, even if it means I'm going to go up and down my stairs a bunch of times. And, it doesn't have to be some major workout where you have to put on, your gym clothes and shoes. So I'm
Right.
really
Yeah, go
encouraged
back
by
to that
this.
London. Yeah, go back to that London bus driver study I talked about at the beginning. If you are collecting steps during the day, you're good.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And let's talk really quick about you have something for my listeners if they want to kind of get more inspiration for exercise.
Yes, I have a YouTube channel, and one of my playlists on there is specific to learning how to program for your exercise. So it's not necessarily showing, okay, here's how you do a bicep curl, but it goes more in depth on some of the things we talked about today of how are you going to set it up? What do you need to look for if you're, doing some videos online? What are some things that you need to consider and so forth? And so I'll shoot you the YouTube link so that everybody can grab into that and subscribe and watch and get some help on that. And I've also got other videos on there. And every Monday I do a Monday motivation video so you can keep your motivation going.
And where else can they find you if they want to get a hold of you?
Yes, I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. And then my website.
And YouTube.
And
Right.
yeah, in addition to that, and YouTube. Yep, absolutely.
And I'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes so that you can connect with Sherry. And for next week, we're going to talk about something big to tie all of this in together. Do you want to give them just a little hint or a teaser on what we're going to talk about?
Actually, I'll even give you an assignment. I'm big on this homework thing.
Okay.
Sorry about that, you all. We are going to be talking about how to make healthy habits stick. And, we've talked about intuitive eating, we've talked about exercise, but talking about it and making it a habit are two different things. So what I want you to do is think about between now and next week, what is one goal that you have for yourself that you want to focus on while we're talking about the steps next week. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's perfect because then
Okay.
they have a week to decide, and you only get one, right? No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean you could do more,
I
but
mean,
one is
yeah,
better to attack at a time.
absolutely. And that will actually be one of the principles that we talk about.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Sherry, and I can't wait to talk to you next week.
Me too.